Oh, I gotta do my timer too.
Hold the phone.
I'm gonna pass out.
Okay. Hey, welcome back to the Borondy Group podcast, episode 2, all about investing. Actually, this is version 2 because we did a full podcast on this topic and forgot to record the audio. So maybe the major takeaway today is going to be check your audio levels.
Check the mics.
So I'm here today with 2 other realtors that I actually consider dear friends. Paolo DiVitantonio from Ridge Realty Group. Hey,
Thank you very much. Hello. Happy to be here again.
Again. We're also not wearing the same clothes. We thought about it so you guys wouldn't know. But and then from our own Borondy Group team, we have Stephanie Ammendolia. Hey, Steph.
Hi, happy to be here.
Awesome. So we're going to dive in and we're going to give you guys lots of tips and tricks on if you've never bought an investment property, if you're a seasoned investor, things to look out for or things that you've never thought about. But just so you know where your information is coming from, I'm going to give you a little bit of background on these 2 rock stars in the industry. So Paolo, why don't you tell me a little bit about how you got into being an investor-centric agent, but also your own background in investing.
Yeah, for sure. So my... what did I call it the last time? I called it a journey, and I thought that was really weird.
It is. Your real estate journey.
My real estate journey, it started when I was 24, and I bought, I really wanted student rentals. Don't ask me why. I thought that was like a cool thing to buy. So I went to my broker, and with 5% down, I was able to buy one in Thorold. I wasn't working at the time. I was doing my apprenticeship, so I was in school phase. So I was like on EI, and somehow the beauty of that many years ago, you could get mortgages with that kind of stuff. And then it evolved. You know, we went onward and bought like duplexes, triplexes, things like that. Got really into flipping. I love the instant gratification of being able to turn something ugly into something beautiful and get like the feedback from how nice it turned out and stuff.
So we were actually a part of it. So before Paolo was a realtor, he was a friend of mine, and we actually bought his duplex. So I've seen him in action. So I know exactly what you're talking about. You do.
I was also a client.
Yeah, he was a client. Yes, friend turned client. Turned realtor, and now he can teach me a few things on multi-res. So he's definitely, these 2 people are guys that I call all the time when I have questions. So yeah, definitely your journey expedited quite quickly.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, and now it's just, I still invest, but, now I take a pleasure out of trying to help make other people money as well, right?
That's
like
awesome.
that's good fuel for what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
So.
Awesome. So Steph, for realtors listening, Stephanie Ammendolia, that last name might sound familiar. Steph is the prodigy daughter of Augie Ammendolia, who, if anybody was in the multi-res buying, investing cycle circuit in, I don't know, Augie,
the last
10,
20
15
years.
years, 20 years. You would have come across Augie Ammendolia. He's a veteran for sure.
OG,
so,
absolutely.
He's the OG in multi-res.
I know, showing you guys properties.
Yeah, I think he actually took us
day.
on some tours when we were looking at some multifamilies downtown. So I remember him specifically up the stairs, touring us around.
Yeah,
cool.
he knew his stuff. So
absolutely.
I'm sure, Stephanie, he imparted some wisdom on you. Tell us how you got
He sure
into
did. So I have been in real estate, it'll be 8 years coming up in September. My first investment was with my brothers and my dad. We all went in and bought an 8-unit apartment building close by to another one that we had. And flipped it in a sense, held it for a few years, and then sold that. And then I ended up buying a condo. And I haven't invested any more yet. Been too busy, I guess, helping other clients and things like that, purchasing their own. But yeah, I can't wait to get into something new.
And you've done a lot of property management with your own family buildings, right? Like, how does that...
Since high school, like I said, I remember when my dad was even at Remax Escarpment, I was coming to the office up on Fennel, and I was like a little punky girl in high school sitting at his computer doing performas. Like, I knew what performas were at like 12 and 13.
Something
like,
you're not supposed to know.
No, like, so when I started, I was like, is there a performa on that? They're like, this is a residential listing. There's no such thing. But yeah, so I helped growing up with, going to landlord and tenant court, filing eviction notices, doing rent checks on people, screening tenants, all that fun stuff. And I think we talked about it before, like little tidbits from the real estate side. Moving into kind of tenant screening was the geo warehouse. I think we talked about like checking to make sure if you're getting a tenant who is applying for a lease and they've got somebody listed as a landlord, pull up the geo warehouse. We have the means to do that. Make sure that owner is the owner of that property and they're not kind of fibbing on things like that. So definitely that background has helped with me kind of educating my clients when they've been looking to purchase anything from a 2-unit to 12 units, anything like that. So it's definitely been helpful.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's true. And you know what? We help a lot of investors lease their properties, and especially for first-time investors, we do a lot of tenant screening for them. We do it less and less because I do feel it is important for the landlord to be satisfied with their tenant versus me. We might have different opinions. I have no issue with pets. Some landlords are pets and credit scores and all those kinds of things, but definitely educating a first-time investor on things to look for when you're doing background checks and credit checks.
You get one chance, for the most part, to get into either a good situation or get into a very bad one where you might be at the landlord-tenant board every other day trying to get your rent money. So
it's really worth it. To getting a good tenant and treating your tenants well too. Like I'd mentioned Brian Hogben. I remember him making a comment one time about treat your tenants well from the beginning. When they move in, get them a gift basket, because it can make the difference of it's a Canada Day long weekend and their AC blows and they're calling saying, we need you here now, versus, hey, it's cool, we'll wait it out for the weekend. We got some fans, so treat your tenants well, they're there to help, your property run sufficiently.
Your landlord-tenant currency, so that's a good one.
Yeah.
Okay, so when we talk about buying an investment, so for a first-time investor that hasn't bought anything before, there's a lot of doors they could go into. They could go into pre-construction, they could go into duplex, triplex, they could go right into apartment building depending on budget. What do you think makes a good investment at the end of the day? If somebody's got kind of a wide range that they're open to, what do we look at? Do we look at cap rates or equity growth? Maybe, Paolo, you can talk a little bit about what a cap rate is even.
Cap rates, simply put, are the correlation between your net operating income and whatever the purchase price is going to be. Typically, on the smaller scale, duplex, triplex, even single family, we don't really look much at cap rates. It used to be more prevalent, but now what's more important for us is cash on cash return, right? We want to know how much are we putting into this thing and how much are we making on an annual return on our money? What is that percentage and how does that stack up against other investment vehicles, stocks, bonds, whatever. The big stuff where the banks really look at capitalization rate as a qualifier for your financing, then we start to really dive into caps for sure. But and I don't know if your experience is the same, but on the small stuff, it's more cash on cash return.
Which is a great way to say it. So people have never heard of that cash on cash. So if you put money into the stock market, what's your return on your initial investment? Some people say, oh, well, here's my net at the end of the day. So it's not taking into account mortgages or carrying costs, but it's just strictly, if you have $50,000, how much cash am I making year over year on that $50,000? Because then you're looking at where else you could put it for the same return.
For sure.
Yeah. I think for many years we had Hamilton historically had low rents. The rents were, below market value, and we had so many people coming in from Toronto, even if they were duplex at the time. All they wanted to know was, what's the cap rate? What's the cap rate? And Hamilton cap rates were low. They were like 3 to maybe you'd get like a 4.8, maybe, very like slim chance. So you had to kind of look at it and educate other agents and clients and say, listen, it's all about this future earning potential. Where is this building going to go? Where is this duplex going to go? It's not all about what it's making right now, but where can you take it? So Paolo talked about renovating units. Well, that's what you have to look at. What's your cash in versus your cash out? So you could buy something now that needs a full overhaul. Once you put a few thousand into each unit, maybe just doing kind of quick changes here and there, how much more rent can you get? Where has the rent changed? So I think people now buying are a little bit more educated in terms of not focusing just on that cap rate and looking more at the larger grand picture of things. Where is this building going to be in 5 years from now? How much more can I make on it? How much more rent can I make on it? Things like that.
I find the new investors are the ones that really talk about cap rate a lot, and it's something that they've read about or heard about.
In a seminar.
And it's like, it's fresh in their mind. They don't even know exactly what it means, but it's like this cool term that they heard. So they're like, well, what's the cap rate on it?
I was told to ask.
I have no idea.
And I don't know. It needs to be a 7.
And I need a pro forma. Please give me a pro forma.
I'll just tell you that it's gonna net you this kind of a return, and this is what you're gonna make at the end of the day. And if we pull it out over 5 years, this is what your return's gonna be. I don't know what the cap rate is. I can do the math for you if you want, but I mean that's really not the most important part here. But yeah, they slowly, as soon as they own a property, I find like the ones that buy and own and have operated investment properties really understand how to break them down and not focus so much on that cap rate, but look at the bottom line, like what is my cash flow, what is my return on a annual basis. So takes experience, I guess.
Absolutely, and then there's some experienced investors that forget about the cash on cash or the equity growth in it. I have a landlord right now that's had a property for years, and it's now time that it needs some renovation, because we're getting to a point where we're going to start to need higher end rent, and the inside finishes don't necessarily meet that. So what started as a paint and flooring has now turned into a six-figure full kitchen renovation. And her first question to me was, well, Alex, if I'm going to spend this much money, how much more can I get on the rent? And I said, well, you're not going to recover that money in your first year, maybe your first 5 years. I said, but you still remember this is a property that you own, and that investment is going to translate into the future resale value. She goes, oh my God, you know what? I didn't even think of that. So sometimes people get lost in those little month over month cash flow things, and you got to look at the whole picture, right?
Exactly.
That's awesome. So when you guys are out working with investors, like who are you working with now? Like who do you find, are we getting these, is it young guys coming out of college, maybe like you were in between jobs and looking at this as a way to make money? Are we seeing the seasoned investors? Are we seeing any single women get into the investor cycle? Like who are you guys working with? What's that profile?
A lot more women, actually, now that you mention it, for sure. And a lot more women taking the lead, even in a husband and wife dynamic. Like I find like the women are actually really involved, like way more involved than they used to be. And they're talking about, you know, what kind of rentals do we have to do? What type of return are we getting? And they're speaking all the right language, and it's really cool. But also young people, there are a lot that are just getting into their professions. Obviously, I think you have to have a level of income, so you have to have a pretty good job in order to, especially now with the way the pricing
getting
is,
mortgages or anything,
to get qualifications and things. But definitely a younger range, and you know, we were young when we were doing it, so it's not changed dramatically, but definitely some young people coming up for sure.
It's all relative to the time you're in now. I'd say I've got a bit of a mix, like seasoned investors coming in. A client Alex and I are working with that was thinking about 850, and they said, you know, we just want a duplex. We initially wanted something already done. We didn't want to have to do any renovations, go through the city, things like that. But then they figure, okay, if we're going to spend 850 on a duplex, because that's what things are selling for up on the mountain right now, those bungalows with an in-law suite in the basement are selling for 850.
Wow.
So they figured, why not, when you're already up to 850, 300,000 more, let's go to that 1.2 and see what else we can get. And in that market, you're looking at 5 plexes and under. So it opens it up, and I think investors too, if they're looking to invest on a scale up to $1 million, there is flexibility because they have the cash flow, as long as they do obviously have the cash flow, but they're able to kind of move around to say, okay, what is going to make the best investment for us? Should we spend more to make more by having more units? Or those first-time kind of investors that you're talking about, Paolo, they're looking more so for a duplex, a triplex, or something that they can cut up. Like I just showed a property yesterday that is 4 units. They bought it in August. 2 young guys, probably in their 20s, late 20s, and they're renovating the whole place. And it was beautiful, exposed brick, nice backsplashes, nice finishings. They had beautiful hardwood throughout, and they're young guys, and they're doing the work themselves, which is nice to see.
And that's the beauty of Hamilton, specifically, if we're going to talk about that market, is you can't over renovate them now. Like back years ago, doing like really cool exposed brick boutique style stuff was like, oh God, I'm not gonna spend that much money on it because I don't know what the rents are gonna be.
We have a ceiling here.
But now, I mean, sky's the limit on the rent. So you could really put out an awesome product and see it back.
And
right?
people are looking for that. Like I tell my clients now, they're like, oh, what if we just did a little paint and you know, change some light fixtures? And I said, there's a lot of people doing this right now, so you need to have the units looking nice. They want dishwashers, they want central air or a split system AC unit, you know. It's not as easy as it was maybe 20 years ago or 15 years ago with these landlords that would just, you know, change a coat of paint and, you know, Bob's your uncle and you got a new tenant moving in.
You get out of it what you put into it, right?
100%.
It's your product. If you put out an inferior product, you're going to get an inferior tenant base. So put out something good and get good back.
Because there's a lot of good professional tenants in Hamilton right now, in the terms of 100%. Professional being, you know, they've got good jobs, they're just not ready to buy, or they're here, you know, from the hospital and they're here on a residency or things like that.
Do you guys find, and I'm starting to talk to clients because every year at this time we start to do equity checks, and we're starting to tell people about the amount of equity they have. And we have some people that just aren't ready to move. Say, you know what, Alex, I don't really need more space, or we're not ready to downsize, wish we were. And I've had this conversation a few times, and I said, well, you know what, guys, you've made a lot of money, and maybe there's one lady said, you know, there's a unit in the building that we love that came up, and when we're ready to downsize, that would be where we go. And I said, well, why are we waiting till you're ready to downsize and that unit might not be available? You have the equity. Why not pull it out, buy the unit to secure it so you know where you're going, and then rent it for now, and then till you're ready to sell? Like, I think there's maybe a sort of trend as equity has gone up, maybe people don't need to move, but they're starting to look at a second property first before they increase size. Are you guys seeing that?
Oh, absolutely.
Your clients do?
The refi market has become massive. People are pulling equity to invest, where I feel like that conversation used to be a tough one to have, where people didn't understand the concept of pulling money out of your principal residence, for example, and using it to invest in property. They thought, no, I got to pay my mortgage off. Like, I've only got 20 years left. I'm going to pay it off. And it's like, well, why not leverage that, equity that you have and get more assets that are going to eventually pay themselves off down the road? So I find that that is becoming way more mainstream than it ever was before.
And I think it almost maybe seems like a daunting task, like buy something else and then I have to manage it. How do I get a tenant? Like, people found like, I don't know what to do. And now I think realtors are so invested in their clients. Like you said, Alex, like, if my clients are buying an investment property, a duplex, even a single family or a condo, I'm there helping you rent it. I'm going to be there to help you get a tenant, to educate you along the way so that you are able to do it. Because I think it's smart if you are buying something 4 units and under or 3 units and under, depending on your availability and your scope of knowledge. I think it is good to manage your own buildings to start. You want to know what's going into it. You want to know what's going on with tenants. You want to know you're using the right forms, things like that. And in terms of what you were saying, Alex, I think that way of thinking is also very good in this market we have right now for these buyers who have maybe budgets of $500 and under, which is an extremely tough first-time buyer bracket right now. And we've talked about it. Why not flip our thinking? I know maybe you're a first-time buyer and you want that dream house right now with all these wonderful finishings. Why not look at it as an investment? Buy what you can get right now just to get into that market.
Right.
And then either refinance it in a couple of years if you can, do an open mortgage, variable, and refinance it, and then use that money and buy something else or sell it in a few years. Just because it's your first time buy doesn't mean it has to be your forever buy. It has to be everything on your wish list. You
gotta get in. You gotta get into
that should encourage people to do it younger. Like, some people like living at their parents' house at 20 to 25, and that's great, but they might have a good job already. So guys, don't wait to get out of the market or get into the market when you're older, just because that's the time in your life when you're ready to move out. Then buy an investment property and let that grow, because it's going to grow faster than you can save.
No one got to the top of the ladder without hitting the first rung.
No, and I think a lot of people are nervous too. Like, when I had a father who was in real estate, and to this day I'm like, why didn't you have me buy like 5 properties? I was working at Dollarama and I had all this money saved up. But I think people are nervous. Like, I know that you need 2 years income, this and that, but I think people get nervous to think like, oh, I won't even be able to get approved, so I don't even want to try. But that's why we work with mortgage brokers.
Exactly.
I tell clients all the time, call them and set yourself up. They will tell you what to do to get there in 6 months to a year.
And to that point, I can't tell you how many times I've sent them to a broker and they've come back and said, I didn't know that I could actually
100%.
spend that much. And it's like, well, but of course not. If you've never looked into it, how would you know?
The financing is mind-boggling, and that's what we say is probably, we can all agree, that's your first step. If you're looking to invest in real estate, some people go to the investment seminars, they read books, they want to go see properties right away. We all agree, first step is
mortgage. Please, looking at the camera right now. If you are looking to get into real estate, please get your financing in order, figure out what you can spend. It helps all of us so much more when we can focus, and then we know where we should be sending you, what we should be showing you, as opposed to just kind of like throwing it out there and like see what sticks. Like, that's not an effective way to do anything.
No, and especially if you're looking at things, I always use the analogy for wedding dresses. Men, I don't know if you're gonna get it, but women looking at a wedding dress for $5,000, finding out their budget is $3,000. It's the same for houses. You don't want to be looking at things that you can't afford. It's going to turn you off of
set yourself
your
up
right
for
path.
Disappointment.
Exactly.
Right? Like, you don't want to get your hopes up and then have reality slap you in the face. Like, get the reality first and then go shopping.
And have a plan, and don't be discouraged if it means not buying this year. If they say, well, you need to save up 10 more thousand, or you need to make this much more at work, or whatever it is.
Consolidating your dets, paying off certain cards, putting it all together. Like,
remember, it's
they will help you.
It is a journey. Paolo said it's a journey, guys. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Not a sprint. No. It could be a sprint too. If you depends.
Short-term investments. I think we're talking about that.
Do you guys? Do people expect to make money in their first year? Like, do you see investing in real estate as a short-term plan? Is it a long-term? Can it be both?
I think it's regardless of short or long-term plan, there's always money to be made in one form or another. It could be cash flow, which would be great if you set it up that way, if the property is, has enough units, has enough rental income.
Yeah.
But truthfully, you're going to get a gain on your appreciation or your principal pay down. When you're borrowing money for so little, you're naturally going to build equity every mortgage payment that you make. So of course there's money to be made in year one, for sure.
I agree. Especially, it depends on your investment. Like you said, you were doing flips to start. People are making money off flips. That's quick. That's
absolutely.
a 6 to 8 month kind of turnover there. And especially even now, like getting into the market now and closing in 2 months, people are making money in 2 months before they even close on their properties. Or
excessively so at the moment, but I mean,
that's exclusive to the market right now. But even Alex talked about new builds as an investment. Buying at phase 1 to phase 3, you're making money before they close. So you don't. When people think of investing, I think so many people focus in on, it's buildings or it's commercial. It doesn't. It can be anything. It's small investments. Are great to start.
And it's good to know who you are as a person and what your lifestyle is before you decide. Like some people come to us, and I think you guys find it too, we want to buy a duplex, we want to buy a triplex, we want a 6-unit apartment building, and they're very set on what they think they want. But you have to know your time too. Like I find there's some people that they're partners and they have families and they got careers and they're busy, but they want to take on a building in Paris or Brantford or North York or somewhere that's far away. But they don't realize the amount of management that goes on a day-to-day basis on a rental property of that magnitude.
With multiple tenants, multiple things can happen. And especially, like I said, if you're going to be that hands-on, you want to be there for light bulbs that are getting changed, making sure the pathways are salted, shoveled, things like that. So you got to make sure that you're accessible if you don't have a property manager.
Yeah, because the hot water tank, if it's going to go, it's not going to go at 1 o'clock on Sunday. It's going to go at 3 o'clock in the morning on Monday when you're not available. So those things like I'm a single female, so I'm necessarily not the best person to own in my mind, a 6-unit apartment building without a property manager, because I'm not going to be there. I'm not going to cut the grass. I'm not going to do all these maintenance things that maybe a single guy like Paolo at the time, if something broke, you'd have the wherewithal to fix it. So I tend to strictly invest in new construction condos. There's no maintenance. I don't worry about it. I invest a small amount of time over a few years and let that grow. And that's kind of that fits my lifestyle. I think when you have to look at an investment property, what is your lifestyle? What realistically can you expect from
I guess
this,
the best way to put it is there's no wrong answer. Right?
No.
Your appetite for certain things is going to change over the years, and it may be different now than it's going to be in 2 or 3 years from now. You can always change your approach, but you need to start somewhere, I guess, is the takeaway, and whatever that starting point is has to fit your lifestyle and kind of how you operate and know yourself. Like
don't buy a flip property if you're not handy, because you're going to lose all your profit in contractors.
I can't tell you how many times people have come to me and said, listen, I want to do a flip. I'm like, okay, awesome. What do you do? Well, I'm an accountant or whatever. And then I'm like, okay, great. Like, do you have any skills on your own to do these renovations? No. I've got 2 left hands. I'm like not.
Well, there goes your entire budget.
I'm like, okay, awesome. That's good. Okay, no problem. Do you have like contractors lined up? Oh, well, we were hoping that like you have a bunch of them and stuff. I'm like, well, guys, you got to be a little bit prepared, right? Like a flip is a big proposition. Like you're essentially becoming a contractor while you do it. So. And there's a good way to lose a lot of money if you're not doing it correctly. So
your timelines,
and knowing when people do it incorrectly. Like we've had some realtors and a partner of mine at one time was renovating their own house, but knew enough about what was being done to recognize that the plumbing was being done wrong.
Oh, wow,
so if you have no skills in that, and you're going there, and then these guys are going to take you for a ride a little bit, maybe delay it. Oh, we didn't realize, and we're going to redo it. That's your most of your profit budget or whatever your profit in a flip is from that work that you've done yourself. Don't you find like you could make more money in your sweat equity?
Yeah, that's the best way to make the maximum return. Now, it's not always feasible. Sorry, I can't speak today. Feasible for everybody, but
it's a Friday.
It's a Friday Afternoon. This is the second take.
Yeah,
so,
2.0. Okay, we're ready.
First one was full of mistakes. This one is more polished.
Or so we think.
Now, what was I saying?
I have something to say.
Please, just jump right in.
I was going to say partnerships, investing and getting into a partnership could be good. If you're the accountant, maybe you've got the money behind it, but you've got a partner who can put that sweat equity in. You're going to team up and say, let's do a flip together.
Those work well.
And we're seeing it a lot more. We're doing our investor newsletter, and it's going to be talking about that. pairing up with a lawyer to kind of get you that information to make sure you're doing it correctly, you know, depending on if you're going to sell, hold it, who's putting in what. But I think it works, and I think especially in this market with it being so tough for buyers to get in, it is smart. Having that partner with you increases your budget and maybe your flexibility on what you can do with a property.
And you can't take for granted what other people find value in, right? Like the handy guy might say, well, I can't believe I'm going to be able to partner with somebody and not put any money in. Whereas they're not considering that the guy with the money is thinking to himself, you mean I can do a flip and all I have to do is write a check? This is amazing. So like, don't take it for granted. Like,
No, work with people,
just because you are set in one way doesn't mean that that somebody else wouldn't do something, right? Like,
Absolutely. And if you guys are
doable.
one of those people in that partnership, you don't know that other person, talk to us. Call Stephanie, call Paolo, because we have people on either side of that spectrum. So we can easily partner you with somebody that we know's got the money or the experience to pull this off.
It's just waiting for somebody to maybe increase that budget.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you are looking to invest now, Hamilton has been on everybody's radar. It's been like the place to be for the last, I don't know, I could pull back a Maclean's magazine from 8 years ago. And, you know, before when Hamilton was the ugly cousin of Toronto and people wouldn't admit, even Burlington agents didn't like to cross the bridge to come to Hamilton. You guys remember these days. So Hamilton's on everybody's radar, but now the prices have gone through the roof. Is Hamilton still a good place to invest? Is there still opportunity here?
Yes. I'd say so.
Hamilton for sure.
Definitely opportunity. Yeah, your price points are going to be a little bit higher. I think the key now is you have to have a little bit of vision. And if you're jumping into an investment of some sort, you can't just set a criteria for yourself and then try to find properties that fit your criteria. What you have to do is explore. Look at a lot of different things. Utilize professionals that are on the ground every day, and find those properties that maybe aren't as obvious, and then have a little bit of vision, either yourself or with your realtor or whomever, your partner, and then see how what you can now do to those properties can now fit into that box of criteria and become a viable investment property.
Even looking back on the market now, like I'm trying to find properties that have been listed for over 10 days. They're very minimal, but there are some out there. Well, why didn't it work for somebody that maybe it can work for us?
Right.
So you, like Paolo said, you have to look at things kind of in a full scope of it and see what's available, what's out there. And yes, there is still investment areas in Hamilton. You know, Homeside area, I would say, is a great place to invest. We saw Crown Point really come up in the last, at least even 3 years.
It's still affordable down there, actually.
It is.
Which
Like
is funny.
East Hamilton, like for the longest time, like nobody was buying on Melvin Avenue. Like I remember driving around with my dad, and he would be like, oh, you know, this is kind of large apartment areas and things like that. But now you're seeing more people buying in these East End areas, and they're making money off it. Like it helps too with what's happening with our restaurant scene. Obviously, you know, with COVID, things aren't as vibrant as they used to be, but we kind of had our Lock Street, and then we moved to James Street, and then Ottawa Street, which was, you know, a textile industry for years and years, finally became somewhere that had butchers and the Cannon Coffee Co. and gelato bars and wax bars and things like that.
James Street of the East, right?
And it is, like
absolutely.
People loved Crown Point for that reason. And I had clients, my very first deal in real estate was on Kensington Avenue North. And Ottawa Street was not really there at that point. I don't even think the Cannon Coffee Co. was open at that point. And they sold in a year and they made $100K on it. Like that was an area that was like kind of like, we're not sure about, but it came up. So anybody who invested in Crown Point area at least 3 to 5 years ago is going to do well. My
second deal was in Crown Point, and it was a huge triplex on Park Row.
Oh yeah.
It was listed at $199.
And I got it for?
And I got it for $201. I was like, you know, and it was amazing. You know?
Triplex for
and it was like 3,500 square feet. It was a huge triplex.
Do you still have that one?
Well, it's a client. I did.
Oh, I thought maybe you bought it.
Listen, we're not going to kick me for not buying
I know. If you only knew. If we all bought Tesla stock.
Where's the damn time machine? Like, get me back there.
Honestly, we look back.
A really good client of mine, still a client of mine, and they bought it, and it's, I mean, they still have it.
See, that's amazing. A great investment.
But that was Crown Point at the time, and it's obviously increased since then, but it's still relatively affordable. Like,
it is a really undervalued pocket. Like, to be close to transit, to have the Ottawa Street restaurants and amenities, better schools, pools.
Close to Nikola Tesla, close to the Red Hill, like.
I don't know, and it has the style of homes to still do, maybe you have a 1.5 story upstairs and you have a separate side entrance to a basement apartment. It still has that the mountain has done so well with, but I don't know why people haven't realized, maybe that's your tip for today, guys. If you're thinking about creating a duplex.
Those center floor plans are big in that area.
Yeah, look at that East Hamilton area. And we're also going to talk about creating accessory apartments. Paul, I don't know if you've done this yourself or with your clients. I think you have, but creating accessory apartments is something we're going to talk about this month on our newsletter.
It's all the rage.
The city's passed Bill 108, which Augie, Stephanie's dad, talked to us about the other day about creating accessory apartments because the city's so short in housing. So what's that process look like of going through to legalize a basement apartment?
So it's so much nicer now than it used to be. So
really?
City of Hamilton is, as like alluding to that point you just made, has eased their restrictions on it. They're trying to make it easier for investors to do it. And truthfully, as long as you cooperate with them and you do it the proper way, they're not there to jam you up. They're not trying to hinder you. They just want to work with you.
And they're telling you, these are the rules, these are the stipulations.
And it's pretty straightforward. Right? So when you're looking at a property, like when we do it, if we're looking for it, we want it to meet as many of the criteria of Section 19 of the building code as possible. So we don't have to go through the minor variance or
changing zoning.
Zoning for sure.
Yes.
If it's got
if it's
bad
in a
zoning,
residential,
then you kind of want to steer away from it. But
you're looking for a residential, so explain that a little bit on that zoning. So
typically the D zone in Hamilton, if we're being specific, is single and two-family dwellings.
Okay.
So if it's in the D zone, which a lot of properties are, let's be honest, so even up the mountain, you're pretty good. And even if it is in the C and strict residential, you can still put accessory units in them without doing variances. The biggest roadblocks that we find are parking. Because you need, especially for a duplex, you need tandem parking. You got to be side by side. It has to have a certain width, obviously, of the driveway, but you also need a certain amount of green space too. So you can't just eat up all your grass,
front.
Right?
Yeah. So do you need one parking space per unit?
For a duplex.
For a duplex. Yeah. And then if you're not able to abide by the rules that they're setting, that's when you apply for your minor variances, right?
Which basically means you're asking for an exception from the city.
Exactly. You
but
pay
it's
for
not
it.
just from the city, because they send the letter out to all the neighbors. So it's and then it goes to the committee of adjustments, and if anybody that's been notified of this in the immediate area wants to air their grievances and come to the
come with
committee,
the bell ringing,
they can, right? Very rarely do they get in your way. I mean, it's not something that
especially
happens a lot,
in that kind of urban dense area. Like if I've got clients who are looking specifically for any type of multi-res downtown, I alert them they're not all legal. You have to understand there are a lot of illegal or legal non-conforming units in Hamilton that we've talked about, and in I think it was 2016, 2017, the city at that point was going after them, and they were evicting all of these people, and then a bunch of realtors and landlords stood up and said, listen, like, we already have a homeless issue in the city, and now you're going to be evicting all of these people who are renting apartments. So, you have to make it safe, and I think what they were trying to do was get rid of those, hate to use the word slumlords. They were trying to get rid of that. They were trying to, at least have these units be safe. But what I look into, and I'm sure the both of you do the same thing, if a client is looking in an area that maybe isn't, legal right now, but like Paolo said, you're looking at that zoning, I want to make sure at least how many other mailboxes are in the houses around us. Are there primarily other multi-reses around us? Or are you the only duplex on this full row of single-family homes? Right. That makes a difference, because when it does go for, minor variances or the committee of adjustments, those neighbors might not be as accepting as people who say it's a lot of tenants in the area and things like that. So you got to know your surroundings.
If you've got the neighbor with the manicured lawn on the residential street and he's out there, cutting his grass with scissors and stuff and trying to make it perfect, and you're saying, hey, we're going to put 3 units here, they're going to say nope, and they're going to come to the committee of adjustments and make your life miserable.
So know your surroundings.
Good advice. Do a quick pan count mailboxes, fire escapes, or good telltale. We do that with single family. If people are looking for a single family house, and when we say, well, what's the area like? I say, okay, stand on your back deck and look around. If you see fire escapes coming out of every single house around you, you're the only single family, and everybody else is 2 and 3 and 4 units. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but there's going to be a lot more activity in your neighborhood. Maybe less families, more single or couples, because that's generally what fits in those apartments.
Yeah, and a lot of cars parked on the street if they don't have the parking, right?
Yeah. Check as many boxes as you can before you get started, and then, it makes your process easier. If it meets almost none of the Section 19 that you're going to be uphill battle. You've got a lot of work.
Yeah.
So we need parking, fire rating in between floors or anything like that?
Parking is huge. So lot size is a big one, so that you can accommodate the parking, even if it's not there yet. As long as the lot size makes it is enough, then you can make it happen. Overall square footage, because you need certain square footages per unit.
Ceiling height too for basements.
Ceiling height for basements, of course, because there's a delineation between what is considered a basement and what is considered a cellar. A cellar can't be converted into a legal suite.
I don't know if you remember, we looked at a property and there was a lady living next to a furnace.
I
remember
some of these basements are bad, and that's the thing.
And
that's what the city was trying to crack down on.
Right, but that's the irony with the legal thing, right? Like,
right.
there are units that are amazing, safe, well done, perfect, don't have the paperwork.
Yeah.
So they're illegal.
Yeah.
And then there are the ones like you're talking about, which
their head is next to a
they have all the paperwork
with a drywall in between, nothing fire rated.
Legal
nothing.
triplex, and it's awful.
It's awful.
It's like, it's more important to build a good product and have a safe product than to just make sure that you have all the paperwork first. So if you're only looking for legal stuff, then you're really narrowing
You're limiting yourself, and they will be more expensive. There is a higher price tag on that.
100%.
And then interconnected smoke detectors, that is a big thing. I always ask anybody who has any type of multiplex, small or large, like, is it interconnected smoke detectors? Because that is the biggest thing, especially if you know that your client is buying something that might have this legal non-conforming basement. You want to make sure that it's fire safe. You want to make sure the windows are large enough. And those might be things that they don't have now. The client wants it. Okay, well, let them know this is what you're going to have to change. This is my suggestion. Get smoke detectors or fire extinguishers in every one of the units. Change the windows. Make them larger. Put some money into it. At least make this unit, even if it's already rented, make it safer for your insurance and for your own peace of mind that you know that this tenant's safe there.
You just said the perfect word too, and this is for everybody that is not going to care and still is going to buy illegal units. Don't lie to your insurance company. Tell them exactly what you got going on there, because it may save you in the short term, but it's going to cost you a lot if there is, God forbid, a fire. So tell your insurance company.
There's more to it than, and just because some other landlord accepted a property and left it the way it was, it doesn't mean you should. You don't need to be that guy or girl.
We know more now, right?
Yeah.
We're more savvy when it comes to investing.
Yeah, make it safe. And the other part of it, of the legal apartments, and people, to circle back to financing, is that if the apartment's legal, you can use the income to qualify for your financing. So, and we see sometimes realtors don't know the difference between legal and legal non-conforming and completely illegal. And they will price a single family house that has 3 units the same as a legal triplex. Don't pay for that. There is a difference.
And pull zoning verifications. Like some realtors
don't, right?
They don't, and they go, oh, it says on Geo Warehouse it's a duplex. I'm like, you cannot go by Geo. You need to go from what the city says. You need to pull that zoning verification to show. And if it's not, if it's a legal 4-plex operating as a 5-plex, well, that's what your client is going to be getting financing for. They're going to get financing for a legal 4-unit, not 5 units.
How do you know it's legal? Oh, it's got 3 hydrometers on the side. That
Yes,
doesn't make
not
it
a
legal.
thing.
That's not a thing.
No.
The hydro company will put a meter anywhere you want. They'll put it on your garage. It doesn't mean it's a legal accessory apartment.
Zoning verification, like Stephanie said, is the only real way to know for sure.
They're not expensive. You know you have a listing coming up, order it. Get it done, have it there, because that's the first thing any realtor is going to ask you. Do you have a zoning verification? Do you have a survey? Things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a buyer agent, if you're working with these guys, we protect you. We make sure we order it. If the listing agent isn't doing their job, you can make sure that the person you have working for you is doing their job. Again, if you want to use that income for financing, that you need to know if those units are legal. Otherwise, you can't use any of it. Awesome. Okay, so we've kind of talked about a lot of those things and the outlying areas. We talked about, because I know, Paolo, you've been in Brantford and Paris a lot lately.
Yeah.
Like, what's the next Hamilton, do you think? Like a St. Catharines, Fort Erie? Are we going Niagara way? Is it Paris? Like, where are we seeing everybody move next for the next cheap investment?
They've always been there. Like, it's not like they just popped out of nowhere.
Neither
right?
did Hamilton.
St. Catharines is a viable market.
Brantford.
Brantford is starting to get a bit saturated now.
Yeah.
I'm finding more and more of the competition that's happening there now is, I used to think we were the out-of-town agents.
I was
but
in
now
competition
there's even
with 21 offers.
further out of town.
21 offers
In
on a
Brantford?
semi in Brantford last night.
Man, it's getting to the point where they're starting to become a bit prohibitive as well, cost-wise. However, their rents are really good, so we can still get some cash flow out there, even at a higher price range, because it's still lower than, let's say, something in Hamilton of the equivalent size and kind of style. So
Yeah.
it does have a lot of similarities with Hamilton. So there's a good familiarity with the investors
styles
when they jump over to that market. It's similar to when the Toronto buyers came to Hamilton. There was a lot of things that reminded them of Toronto, right? So it made for a good fit for them because they were comparing, oh, this reminds me of, and we were talking about this last time, but I don't know any streets in Toronto. What was it, Queen Street?
Oh, Queen Street. Everything is Queen.
This reminds me of Queen
Yeah.
in Toronto, and it's like,
It built at the same time, the cities,
Yeah.
So they were familiar, and it made for a really easy transition into our market. And now Brantford's kind of similar.
Same
St.
for
Catharines is a little bit different altogether. It's a
You're right. When you drive to St. Catharines, it doesn't feel like Hamilton. Whereas, like you said, Toronto can feel like Hamilton and vice versa.
When you
but
get into that downtown core, for sure, you'll notice it.
But that's where you, like one of your student rentals.
Thorold. I had Thorold and Welland at the time. And those markets are actually for home buyers. I mean, like they're taking off. Like Font Hill is beautiful. Welland, I used to think Welland was awful, but Welland has some really nice spots now. Like, and ripe for investment. Anywhere where there's a good single family market and like people want to live is a good place for investment too, right? Like,
Absolutely.
There's going to be renters out there. So.
And the quality of tenant. If you would live there, then probably someone that you're going to rent to,
100%.
you're going to agree with too, right?
Exactly.
Takeaways for tenants and screening tenants. I'm going through this right now. We're looking after a condo building, and like I said before, everybody's got their do's and don'ts and wants and don't wants and pets and credit scores we talked about. I mean, at the end of the day, some people want to see a 900 credit score, 850 credit score, and $100,000 income renting a condo. These are home buyers, right? They're not necessarily going to apply for your one bedroom in downtown Hamilton next to the furnace. Yeah. So is there any advice you give people for screening tenants? Do you use programs? Like I'm starting to use that Neighborly.
So we were using Neighborly for a while. We still do sometimes, but we stopped because they started charging and charging the tenant, and it was harder to get them to fill out the application. I don't want to go crap on
Just
Neighborly.
do your own.
Still good.
Yeah, do your own
I like to do it
diligence.
myself as well. Like I want to be able to call their references, and I'm really looking for employment. I want to know about your verifiable income, and I'm sure you guys are the same way. Your credit score is important in the sense that I want to see if you're a habitual,
The history
you
of
have a
late
problem,
or
right? Like there's an issue
Or
happening
did you just,
there.
not pay a credit card once? You came from a divorce.
Divorce is huge. Divorce
and they
is
might have a
like-
great job,
yeah.
and it just affects their credit. They're not a bad tenant.
But it's income. It's I want to see a job letter from your employer, and I want to be able to call somebody and talk to them and verify. And I think we mentioned it the last time. You don't just read what's on the sheet. You try to trip them up a little bit, right? You got to be like, okay, well, so and so said that he makes 20. He put on his job letter that he makes $25 an hour, but you say he makes $28 an hour, and get them to correct you.
Yeah,
right?
that's
you
a
want
great
to
tip.
know that you're talking
absolutely.
to somebody that's actually in the company that they work for, that is in charge, that did write that letter, right? So you want to like.
Because they will correct you if you're
Absolutely,
giving them
they
the
will.
wrong information.
And if they don't correct you, then you got to wonder, like, well, who is this? Is it like your brother or
I'm
something?
the Google queen because I never call any employer that's on the with the phone number that's on their application. Like I Google the name,
actual
the HR
number,
person. I'll call the
Right,
office
you
directly
have to.
from the website.
Smart.
And I don't have an extension. Can I speak to so and so or anybody in payroll or human resources? Like I'll do that call just to find out.
We would ask for, and we still do, so we want obviously their current landlord to get a reference, but we're always asking for their previous landlord as well.
Yeah.
Because, and calling that previous landlord, and sometimes like, oh, I lived in, a different city. And I'm like, I don't care. I want that.
Sure.
How do you not remember who your last two landlords were ago? So we call because you might get a glowing reference from a landlord right now who wants that tenant out versus the
That's a great
previous
point.
landlord, and
That's
that
a
was a
great
tip
point.
from Augie. The previous landlord is the one who's going to give you an honest, they were,
He's got
here's
no,
the
he's got nothing
situation.
to lose, right? That
Exactly,
person has
it's
got
gone.
no
So,
investment.
and I always say that, and I said, would you rent to them again? Absolutely, or no. Or landlords, be honest. Like you can't deter somebody from renting to a person, but you can be honest. If that person was late, if they left it a mess, if they were, a nuisance to other tenants. And I think a lot of landlords do want to work together in that sense because it can be a headache sometimes if you have a tenant who is terrible. Then, I was going to say a tenant from hell, but it can be awful. It can really put a lot of stress on you. And so we're doing these screenings to make sure that the building runs smoothly and for the respect of the other tenants. When I am screening people, I'm saying, listen, I'm asking all these questions. I'm being very in-depth because I do this to everybody so you can feel safe and you can feel comfortable knowing everybody else in this building has gone through the same process. So we all have kind of similar like-minded people in this building, and they run pretty smoothly. If you're just letting anybody here or there, you can feel the dynamic of the building. Somebody might not abide by the rules and they smoke in their unit, which they shouldn't be, or somebody has a super barky dog or a really loud car, like things like that. Like you got to know everything about who's coming into the building.
Tenant mix is important.
Yeah, whether you can do anything about it or not, you're getting that phone call day after day just to complaining, and that's another piece of being a landlord that, you know, maybe you want to go the property management room so you don't have to hear it. I don't know if you guys do, but I call realtors when people say, "Oh, I have to move because they've sold my house that I was renting." Then I'll go through and find the listing, look at the photos, and I'll call that realtor. Say, hey, you guys just sold a house, there was a tenant, how were they? How were they with showings? How was the place? Did you have to clean it? 'Cause sometimes there's no photos. Oh, no photos due to tenant, whatever. I'll call the realtor. So again, if you guys have the right person on your team, we'll do enough due diligence for you that when we hand over a tenant, say, you know what, and it's usually the best of the best. There's 10 applicants that I didn't even show you. That, you know, I just want to show up with keys today in a bag. Can I walk away with the unit? No.
And we want to put a good tenant in there because we don't want you to have to call us and be like, oh no, they're not paying, they're doing this. Like it looks bad on us. So we're going to do our best to get you guys a good tenant and give you all the tips so that if you are doing your own rentals, you know what to look for and what to ask.
And tenants out there, when you're asked to supply documents, the quicker you supply, the more diligently that you supply your documents, that tells a lot about you, right?
Here's my credit check, here's my employment letter, here's a reference, here's everything.
That goes a long way too. Your organizational behavior, like the way that you operate.
Treat it like a job.
Us,
it's a job interview, essentially.
That goes just as far as
I've intentionally been aloof with tenants sometimes and not responding to see their follow-up, to see how quickly they get everything without me requesting it all the time. Like I'm just going to let it go and see if they are on the ball, because I want to see, do I have to chase them for rent, or are they going to be like, hey, I remember you wanted this, or you asked for this, and what else did you want?
True.
I love those people.
So true.
Those guys.
It's like a little technique, like on the phone with them. If you're quiet and you don't ask a lot of questions, let them do the talking. Wait to see what they're going to say to you.
That's awesome. Okay, so we're going to wrap it up, but just any final, behind closed doors, after dark stories, any funny, odd things that have happened while showing rental properties. I know Paolo's watched me fall up and down staircases.
I watched my realtor in 6-inch
She wears heels all of the time.
Going up and down fire escapes in January, and thought there was going to be a moment where I'd have to save her life. And it never
Get a
happened,
pair of bloodstones, girl.
Talk about a fish out of water. Yes, we're going to go to that top floor.
With the stiletto in between the metal fire escape. I've got two things that come to mind. One, we kind of talked about it a little bit in the previous podcast, and it's something that
it didn't happen. It didn't happen.
Just kidding. Realtors, if you're listing multi-res, and you guys agree, I know, label your keys. That is one thing we talked about. It's nothing's worse than showing up to a property. You're all excited. You got your clients behind you. You open up the lockbox, and literally it explodes with 20 keys popping in your face. Label them. It makes it easier for the showings. And another thing is be there for your showings. This is something that I took from my dad. Anytime I had a multi-res property, that was something I would tell the seller. It would make the seller feel very comfortable. It was in our listing presentation. Like, I will be there for every single showing that this property has. And make a relationship with those tenants. I was the one who was confirming all the appointments directly with the tenants, because it helps. If you're nice and kind to these tenants, I would sometimes even drop off gift certificates. Here's Tim Hortons, $20, because we're going to be having showings here and there. It makes for a smoother process, and it helps the realtor coming with their clients, because nobody's going to know that property better than you and your client. So you're able to answer all those questions so that the seller has told you all the information about the property. So be there for your listings. It really helps you in the long run with getting an offer, and it definitely helps your seller. And I think it helps your seller feel confident and comfortable knowing who's going through the building, who's interacting with our tenants, what are they asking, what are they saying.
Especially with COVID right now, I'm doing it with a tenant-occupied property, because the tenant wants to make sure everybody's wearing masks and gloves. And we had one showing go through where I wasn't there, and they took their masks off in the unit.
It's
and
rude.
He all of a sudden wanted to deny showings, which is now a problem for the owner who wants to sell. So now I am there, say, here's your gloves, here's your mask, go through. And the tenant said, you know what, I appreciate the extra care. And now he's a little bit more willing during a pandemic to let us show his space.
Because that's the thing, the tenants aren't selling. They're the ones who have to go through the people coming through their home on work days after a long day at work, or if they've got kids. So they're letting you in. They have nothing to gain. You're so right.
Yeah,
so
you're
work with
inconveniencing them. And bringing, if you're thinking about not wanting to be there for your showings because you think you're going to butt heads with the other agent. I love it when the listing agent is
Yes.
there. Like
Yes.
I keep my hands in my pockets.
Oh,
I don't need
yeah.
to fumble with any keys, and you
Yeah.
can just take me through.
And they're
the
telling
tour.
you all
Love
of the
it.
things to point things out. Not that we're not going to notice things, but there's things about buildings that not everybody
Right.
knows.
Yeah.
The listing
Right.
agent will know them and the seller will know them. So it's good to
Exactly.
know, hey, the hydro is actually connected to one unit as well as the common corridors. That's
Yeah.
something you should know. Things like that. Like they're going to give you those little tips that
Exactly.
It's
that
better
are
than
that
sending a giant email before they're showing of all the things you need to know that they're never going to
100%.
retain.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Awesome.
What about funny stories? You had a funny story
Well,
from your last one, I thought.
I don't know if they're funny.
I had a funny
Paolo's
story.
We have lots of funny stories. I'm all business, you know. Like there's no humor whatsoever. No, not stories, but I mean, I would say what I take away from everything is that you got to do something. Like take some action, right? Like there's a lot of talk and reading and research and but beating your head against the wall. You gotta take a step at some point, right? Like
Paul was laughing listening to people come back from investment seminars. And
Oh my
it-
gosh.
that's the bane of my existence.
The 3 pages of conditions and clauses and
like who wrote this? Like,
Yeah.
Did you get your lawyer to draft this contract? Like
Yeah.
it's 16 pages long. Like
And they do, and they show up earnestly with this stuff,
Yeah.
right?
It's
Like,
not-
here's
please
what I want to
include
do.
this in my offer.
And you just,
seriously, it's like I'm not doing that. So can we
go,
just
no.
use like a regular one? Maybe like some inspection.
do you want to get this house? Yes. Well, or this property? Then let me do what I do.
Yeah, the seminar people, God bless them. They're the ones that
Yeah.
they take comfort in talking about it and asking a lot of questions with their peer group and stuff, and it's great, absolutely. But at some point, you got to get outside of that. You got to surround yourself with people that take action, right? Like
Yeah.
if you're not doing that, then you're not taking any action either. So be around people that are doing bigger things than you.
yeah.
And it will encourage you to do some big things. And even if you're not catching them, you're still better off than everybody else that's doing nothing.
But doing nothing.
Was that the line?
you're
That was it. That might have been.
Yeah.
Yes.
You're on your journey. Full circle.
Well, this has been awesome. Hopefully we recorded it this time.
Yes,
and,
we have Todd here. We have our
Yes.
video guy to make
Beautiful.
sure. I think
Hey,
it came out
Todd.
better than the first one.
That's right.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for listening. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to either of these two rock stars. Like I said, I do it all the time. Anything you need to know, Stephanie Ammendolia, Paolo DiVitantonio, Ridge Realty Group, Borondy
Follow
Real
us
Estate
on
Group.
Instagram.
Follow us on Instagram. We're posting stuff all the time. Or send us a DM because we'd love to help you guys get started.
And happy
Okay?
Friday.
Happy Friday. See you next time.
Bye. I don't have the. We did it.
There's no audio this